Okay, so we are recording now, and today is May 12th, and let me just get rid of my controls here. And I want to welcome everybody to the webinar tonight, and primarily tonight we're going to be talking about the retrograde planets, because we have three planetary retrogrades that are happening within the next 4 days. And so it's very, very rare to have that happen. We had Saturn yesterday. Today we had Venus. And on the 14th, we have Jupiter. And we already had Pluto go retrograde on April 26th. So they last, Saturn will last in retrograde, and it starts out in Aquarius, and you can see that right here. The red numbers mean that it's turned retrograde. So it gets only to 1 degree of Aquarius when it starts its retrograde, and it lasts until from May 11th through September 29th. So it's going to be in 2 signs for the retrograde. It starts out in Aquarius, and it goes back into Capricorn, so we're going to talk about that tonight. And we have Venus retrograde that started today. Depends on where you live. If you like here where I am in Florida, it started today, but for some people it'll start more like in the early morning tomorrow, and that lasts till June 25th. And then we have Jupiter. I'll show you what that looks like on the chart. Jupiter goes retrograde. You can see the numbers are red here. You see all this is all retrograde and Venus. That's 1 personal planet and 3 outer planets. So Venus is actually a lot more personal though, so we're going to talk about that a little bit more tonight. And, as you know, on April 26th, Pluto went retrograde in Capricorn, and it stays there till October 4th. So, like I said before, we don't often see 3 planets turning retrograde all in 1 week, and we do see that this week. So, if you're feeling like things are like slowing down and there's this adjustment. I'm feeling a little bit less pressure is what I'm feeling. And so first I want to talk about, and I don't know if you guys are feeling that, but it is a time where things start to kind of shift. And so Saturn retrograde at 1 degree. Now Saturn, in astrology we would call Saturn a malefic, meaning it's not a planet that's easy to deal with, but it does have its positive side. So it's a really good time when we have retrogrades to see how we can partner with that energy, how we can work with that energy. And Saturn does have some qualities that, that we have to consider, even though mostly it's, it says, it tells us that it's time for some work, and in Aquarius, it's work with humanity, it's work with achieving goals, it's work at strategizing, it's work at using our minds and our intuition. And so when it's retrograde, that energy gets turned inward. And so during Saturn retrograde, here's some things that you can ask, some questions you can ask yourself. Would you like to be more mature and responsible? Do you want to excel at planning to make the best use of your time? Do you want to manage things better and become wiser? So those are some questions, because Saturn's responsibility, it's time, it's discipline, it's order, it's it's a very strict type of energy. And so it can also be very frustrating, and it can also be that there's speed bumps that slow us down with Saturn. So it can be a detour that forces you to take a longer route, or a roadblock that just stops you in your tracks. So if you're feeling interference in achieving your goals, there's usually a good reason. Probably you have some Saturn aspects, or you're in a transit that is asking you to work with it. One possibility is that Saturn's energy is trying to discourage you from doing something that's not in your best interest. So it's offering you a necessary challenge to prove you're ready to advance. So sometimes it's hard to tell if you should persevere or set a different course. That would take a look at your personal chart. So this is a time to tap into your intuition. And Saturn will it'll be in 2 zodiac signs, as you heard me say before, during the retrograde. So it's going to be about 6 weeks from May 11th before it goes back into Capricorn. It's a farther out planet, so it appears to move slower. But it will, on July 1st, it's going to move back into Capricorn. And so Saturn stays in Capricorn for the remaining months of the retrograde after July 1st. So although right now it's in Sagittarius, and it has very different meanings being in Aquarius versus Capricorn. And one of the things, every zodiac sign has planetary rulers. And so Saturn's the only ruler of Capricorn and the ancient ruler of Aquarius. So it means you can, reap different benefits from Saturn's 2 signs it's in during the retrograde. So with Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, May 11th through June 30th, consider how your structures and habits support you as an independent person. You can ask yourself, are you putting your intuitive ideas into structured action? Or are you managing your time to serve others with your special talent? Now, typically when a planet's retrograde, whatever that planet stands for, it's not a time to move outward with it. But, there are times that if you have to, you have to, but you might be revisiting it. And some of the questions you might be asking yourself, are you managing your time to help others with whatever your talents are? With Saturn retrograde back through into Capricorn on July 1st through September 29th, we return to the core meanings of Saturn. So it's a review of how you're doing in the following areas: maturity, responsibility, time management, planning, limitation, and in using your wisdom. Because Saturn's ultimate goal is to teach us. It's the great teacher. So the retrograde periods are ideal for contemplation and planning, while direct periods are best for forward action. And so there's 4.5 months. It's a pretty long time. May 11th, not only do we see Saturn turning retrograde, but we also have, let me go back to May 11th. You can see here, I'm going to talk about some aspects that we had yesterday. We have Mercury squaring Mars, and that's, you can see Mercury's already moving past it, but you can see this square right here from Mars to Mercury. And, it's interesting. I saw a neighbor walking down the street today, I think she's like a college student, is screaming at her mother back the road. And I mean, Mars's anger and confrontation. This is primarily, overall, so it must be affecting her some way that it's connecting with her. So it indicates there's challenging communication, and Mars is about to change its sign. But Mars, can be conflict, fighting, and Mercury is words. So this can influence verbal attacks, information that's hostile or confrontational. However, this can also fuse a powerful challenge to communicate in a good way. Now, Mercury, it was in Taurus, but it's today it's moved. It actually did yesterday by the evening. But typically Mercury in Taurus is very slow, gradual, patient sign, which is very different than Mars in Aquarius. So this can challenge your mind to learn and help to discipline your mind before diving into a topic you normally have trouble paying attention to. So this can be a challenge to people to communicate for longer periods of time because they want to move, yet there's things that are slowing them down, that they need to think through. So today, May 12th, let me just change this so you can see the next thing I'm going to be talking about. So Mercury is now trining Saturn. It actually was starting yesterday. It's already starting to separate and trining the moon. So we do have that a trine is relief, and it's also that there's harmony. So Mercury is also quintile. You can see this aspect right here. We call it a quintile to Neptune. And so those two kind of work nicely together. So this can be a law of attraction aspect. So when Saturn and Neptune are combined, they're really awesome for the law of attraction, because here's how you can use this. So Neptune is, your imagination, what you can visualize. Saturn is crystallized energy, and you can make it real and make it work. So if you can imagine it, then you can structure it, you can make it real. So it helps us to hold the vision of whatever we want to manifest. So another way is to step into Neptune, to step into that is combined with Mercury is, because Mercury is trining Saturn, influences a stability of mind, because Mercury is the mind, Saturn is discipline, and an aspect like that can bring focus and long-term focus. So while we also have Mercury and quintile to Neptune right here, quintile means that there's some type of talent developing. And so it works, it works with us. It's not a difficult aspect. So it can be, so Mercury quintile Neptune can be, I'm going to open my mind to imagine and visualize for a divine download and magical, there's this magic and there's visions, there's inspiration, because that's what Neptune can be, is in a good aspect. It can be mystical, it can be a source of divine consciousness. So there's also this, so the Mercury trine Saturn, and then the Mercury quintile Neptune gives inspiration, and it's great for mental work also. Then tomorrow, May 13th, we're going to see, well, we already had Venus turn retrograde, but Mercury's, Venus's retrograde is actually a very personal retrograde, and the one that gets the most attention is when Mercury goes retrograde. But Venus and Mars, when they go retrograde, they do get special attention because they're less common and have very specific and personal effects. So actually right now, Venus is an evening star. You can see when it gets dark. She only goes retrograde every 18 months. So it's a big deal when Venus goes retrograde. And here's the themes. There's 3 themes that you can, focus on. How are your most important relationships going? That's something that you want to look at when Venus is retrograde. And how are you doing with your creative expression? And how's your financial situation? These are the 3 most important things with Venus retrograde. So it lasts 6 weeks. It's retrograde. It is, I said before, it's a personal planet, so it's closer to Earth. On either side of the Earth, we have Venus, and on the other side, we have Mars. So reflection is best during this time. So Venus's retrograde is entirely in Gemini, and it's going to go back into from 21 degrees back to 5 degrees. So this allows you to add a new layer of curiosity to Venus themes. Like, do you enjoy enough variety in your relationships? Do they give you enough intellectual stimulation? Are you craving more diversity in your creative expression regarding money? Would it help to have additional income streams? If you have retirement, is it going to be adequate? So those are some of the things that you want to think about during Venus retrograde, and it could be a little different for everyone depending on what area of the chart it's in for you. But here's some of the aspects that Venus is going to be making. As we talked about last week, the Venus squaring Neptune. The challenge of this is to boost your creativity, as Venus is the artist and Neptune is divine, abundant inspiration. But when it's in square like this, it's a real challenge to see past, to get clarity. So this can also help you to deepen your relationship with your higher self. I'm going to talk about some of the positive things that can be done. So doing this can help you gain more harmony, ease, and grace in your daily life. It can also dramatically increase your intuition and saturate you with bliss. Because Neptune, in a nice aspect, it does bring that. But if you can focus on these things more, it can help you with the downside of Venus square Neptune, which can be excessive self-indulgence, laziness, poor personal boundaries, playing the victim in relationships. So another thing that's happening is that we see the moon. Do we have that here? I'm looking at my notes. Venus, it's connecting up with Venus. So the moon, let me see here, let me go back. Yeah. Let's see. I'm not sure where I put this down, but one thing that we can see is we can see Venus sesquisquare, that's this line right here, to Uranus. So this can challenge you to reinvent your relationships on some level. It means that there's changes, and it means that things are different, unusual, so you could be inventive about it. Could even send an intuitive insight with a specific suggestion. So this semi-square, which is what we were just talking about, can also give you a challenge for new creative or fresh ideas of how to work better with your finances. Venus finally makes a loose conjunction. You can see it right here with the North Node. And you saw from the article I put out yesterday, I really did a lot of work on trying to explain the polar nodes, the North Node and the South Node, and what it means to be in Sagittarius, what we're meant to move away from and what we're meant to move toward. So Venus is making, conjunction is when planets get close to each other. So it's getting very close before, it turns retrograde and goes back. But what it means is that this is, the North Node is our destiny. It's where we're going toward. And it's a destiny point, and it's the strongest indicator of life purpose in a birth chart. For us, it's humanity's purpose, humanity's direction. And so, I'd ask you, do you know your life purpose? And if so, are there these specific relationships supporting it or distracting you from it? Is your creative expression or consumption of others' creativity aligned with your life direction on Earth? And, when it comes to money, how are you using it? So Venus retrograde can help you dive deeper into some of the themes that I've just mentioned. And the very last result from Venus retrograde is to come out the other end with new action steps for your life. So we do see that there is a, let me see, between the 10th and the 17th, there's a grand trine. Let's see, let's go back to the 10th. Oh, that was the 10th. Okay. I don't have one of the, it's actually one of the asteroids that creates it, but between the 10th and the 17th, when it ends, we do get a grand trine in, why isn't it showing up here? Do I have Pallas Athena on? Let me go back a little bit. Some reason I'm not identifying it, but there is, there's a grand trine which really helps us from an intellectual standpoint. Let me just take those off because I don't typically use those in my readings. I use Chiron, but so it's communication. It gives us a much more practical, diplomatic communication, mostly right on the 13th. That's tomorrow. So it can help you to negotiate skillfully to get the best possible outcome in committed relationships and with focused intentions. And on the 14th, here's Jupiter retrograde on the 14th, May 14th. And you can see it retrograde right here. All Pluto's retrograde, Jupiter's retrograde, Saturn's retrograde, and Venus is retrograde. So, so we've got a period of 4 days with all these planets going retrograde, and Jupiter goes all the way to back to from 27 Capricorn all the way back to by September 13th. You can see that it's gone back to 17 degrees of Capricorn. So, and Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system, so there's a large number of meanings to Jupiter's retrograde. So here's some things that I thought you can reflect on during this retrograde. Jupiter is higher education, it's philosophy, it's foreign countries. I mean, it's people seeking the meaning of their life. It brings up topics like different cultures and different customs, far travel, journeys, joy, excitement, enthusiasm, wisdom. It's a planet that, you know, brings a lot of wisdom. Philosophers, it rules over philosophers, spiritual teachers, expansion, optimism, and hope. So these are things that you're going to want to reflect on while Jupiter is retrograde, and then take, you know, action after it turns direct on September 13th. So Jupiter retrograde is entirely, the retrograde is going to take place entirely in Capricorn. And it wants to go big. That's what Jupiter does. Biggest planet in our solar system, it's the biggest gas planet. And so it wants to go big, but Capricorn is a serious sign, and it can restrain Jupiter from excess. So Saturn is extremely practical sign, while it loves procedures to get things done efficiently. So Jupiter in Capricorn makes it easier to create useful strategies and plans to go forward in areas you want to expand. So Capricorn is a lot more short, clear, and to the point, where Jupiter would say, just do it all, you know, but Capricorn restrains Jupiter. That's why we don't typically like Jupiter in Capricorn. So here's some things that highlight the differences between these energies. And here's some aspects. We have, if I bring this back to the 14th, and we see them all let's go to the next day because it must, okay, you can see this collection of energy here. And this is the conjunction that brought us the coronavirus pandemic and is 2020's most important, powerful aspect pattern. One of Jupiter's most important meanings is hope. So take a look at the stories. It's very important that we take a look at the stories that we tell ourselves. Jupiter is also about belief and reflecting on your beliefs. And it's also believed that challenges happen, and it's not, if it's not to, you know, it's meant to support your growth and capabilities, and so that you can inspire with energy and enthusiasm to master things. But Jupiter's been called the, you know, one of the things that when we look at Jupiter, when it's in a sign that it likes to be in, it's the great benefic. It's actually one of the luckiest planets in the sky. So we're going to need to remember, you know, the retrograde, remember this while Jupiter is retrograde. It seems that, you know, and we all know this in hindsight, the greatest challenges bring the greatest breakthroughs. So by Friday, the 15th, that's where we're at right here, gives, we have a sun. The sun is trining. You see these blue lines right here? It's trining Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn, this collection. So it gives, you know, Pluto is power, and the trine is an easy way to smooth, an easy, smooth connection with the sun. The sun is our health, our well-being, our vitality, which is in Taurus. So it, you know, brings in a sense of worth. So you'll feel more energized in general wealth and power, and it can come more easily. So the sun in Taurus is positivity around money. Pluto can mean shadow work and diving intensely into some areas you really don't want to see. So you can do this easier and more comfortably during a trine between the sun and Pluto. So by Friday, the 15th, we also have Mercury and Chiron. Here's Chiron, the wounded healer. The key to healing is, you know, healing ourselves. So our minds, our thoughts, it could be a lot easier to receive helpful advice or give advice. So there's a lot of healing happening around with our words and communication at that time. And then, you know, the sun is going to trine Jupiter also by Saturday. So it's going to be easier to receive, and it's going to be more energizing. So then we can go and look at, what's the next day? Saturday. And we can see that the moon is in Pisces, and it's right next to Neptune. So from an emotional standpoint, it's going to be a lot of emotion on the weekend again, but it can also be with the moon in Pisces right next to Neptune. It can be very mystical, but it'll have, you know, we'll have to sit with realizing that, you know, that not everything that we see is real or everything that we hear is real. But we do have a nice sextile with the sun right here. So that's actually breaking up. But let's see here. Let's go look at the next day. The moon by Sunday is already in Aries. And and it's right next to Chiron. So there is some emotional self-healing that's going on, and that's on Sunday. And let's see here, Mars has already, this is a big thing too. Mars has moved into Pisces. When did that actually happen? That happens actually today. Tomorrow, I'm sorry. Moves into Pisces. So our actions will be not so intellectual, but a lot more sensitive and compassionate. And we've got Mars squaring Mercury again. So want to be careful with our words, careful to think things through before we say them. So that's important. And let's go look to Monday. Okay, so there's Monday, and we still have the moon in Aries. And it's actually, moon in Aries means that we're emotionally driven to act on how we feel. We're driven to jump, you know, and it's actually in sextile to Mercury, so that's some nice energy there, creative, you know, intellectual, being able to act and talk and communicate about our feelings. So, and we do have a yod showing up, actually. Yod is a finger of God. That's showing up on May 18th, which is Monday. So that's a time of adjustment, time where we're making adjustments and to the changes and the way the energy is affecting us. So it's a big adjustment. So does anybody have any questions on what we just talked about?
Yeah, Andrea, I just saw something on May 16th. I'm not sure if this is anything, but if you go back to the 16th,
Mm-hmm.
it looks like, oh wait, no, not that one. The one we were just on.
In the nighttime?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay.
It looks like there's a star. So from the midheaven all the way down to where Pluto and Saturn and Jupiter are, and then to where Neptune and the moon are, and then the opposition, it looks like a star.
Yeah, it's not an opposition. That's actually two. There's two yods.
Oh, okay.
This is a yod. Well, this is the beginning of a yod to the midheaven, and this is a yod right here. So, yeah, by the aspects. But that's what that is indicative of, is adjustments. It's spiritual adjustments. It's we're going through things shifting. And yods, that's what yods indicate, that we feel like outwardly we've shifted, but inside we're still going through the adjustment. So it's, you know, it takes some time to make these adjustments from outer motion to inner motion. And if you have those in your chart, yod means that, you know, I just did a chart the other day for a lady that had 3 of them in her chart. And so when she goes through times of change, she might think outwardly that she's adjusted and she's, you know, she's already in the new, but she's not. There's parts of her that are still adjusting. So it takes some slowing down and reflecting and you know, an inner adjustment. That's what yods do. So there's a long conversation about those. So yeah, we have, I see what you're saying though, but that's formed by yods.
Okay. Yeah, it just caught me off guard. It looked interesting.
Yeah, these are what you call inconjuncts, these aspects right here, and they're to the midheaven. So that's gonna move. That's why when I made it 12 noon, you couldn't see this, because it's with the moon and the midheaven. So that's why it changes.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any thoughts or any questions? Or anything you want to share? It's such a time of, this whole week is going to feel like, you know, we've been doing so much that, you know, there's been this like forward stuff with, you know, like Pluto and Jupiter and Saturn, and even with Venus, all these planets are turning inward, retro, revisiting. So we're going to start revisiting areas that we've already had experiences with, in making the, you know, retracing, remembering, revisiting, revising. All of that is going to become really important.
Andrew, I just had one more thing to say about this retrograde with Pluto and Jupiter and Saturn. I
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is a lot more like divinely influenced. I mean, I know that's the natural progression of things anyway because it's happening, but I just feel like it's such a big thing to have all those. It's just a huge coincidence that they've, them being together has created this pandemic and all these issues around the world, but now they're all moving back in retrograde together, and I just feel like it's so divinely influenced. um I don't know how else to express that. I just had that thought when we were going through this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they're, astrology is perfectly shows us a picture of what's going on around us and what the influences are. And what we knew for a long time that these planets were going to all be together, but nobody thought it would bring such an incredible breakdown of business, of government the control
Mhm.
that power that big businesses of all types, people's careers, a complete transformation. And
Mhm.
I don't think anything's ever going to be the same again. It's not to say it's not going to get better, but it's going to take quite some time, and it is in perfect order, because that's what the heavens are. Everything is. It's like if you look if we look ahead in anybody's chart and look at their over the lifetime, their Pluto transits or their Saturn transits, these are long lasting transits. So yeah, we all, I'm thankful. Remember 6 weeks ago when we started doing this, we said everybody want to know, when are we going to get some relief? Well, we're starting to get relief while these planets go retrograde, but it's really important that we realize and revisit and start looking for ways to fix this.
Mhm.
So, does anybody else have any input?
I was just thinking that I think the truth has to be exposed before we can start fixing things, don't you?
Yeah. Oops, somebody just came on. Let me hide that. Well, you know what? Jupiter brings truth. That's one of the things. I gotta find out who's on here. I gotta. Um, okay. Yeah. So yeah, Jupiter is a planet that brings truth. So truth about. Hang on a second. I gotta. Can everybody mute themselves? I can hear a lot of noise. Thanks. Yeah, so Jupiter is a planet that brings truth. It brings understanding. It brings, it brings expansion. So when the retrograde, we're going to go back and revisit what is the truth. It's hard to know what that is. I don't, it's going to be interesting how that unfolds. And with the sun in trine to Jupiter, that could be a time where, the sun shines light on things. And, it's a very positive thing because, it gets what gives us vitality, gives us light. So, it's quite possible that we start to have some of that come out. And, about, yeah, I think that there's a lot of different theories out there. I know that people have been sharing that with me. And it's also very confusing, as we talked about last week with Venus and square to Neptune. It's confusing. So we have to reach really deep to overcome these challenges around confusion. And because that's what Neptune, especially this weekend with the moon right next to it, that's going to feel like it's expanded. It's going to feel like that's deep. So, anybody else have any questions? You know, we can talk about the nodes a little bit if you want. The things that we are meant to look at, which is with the South Node, you know, and we've just ingressed into Gemini Sagittarius. So that means that we're still adjusting, but this is a lot more mutable than what we were used to. We were with the North Node in Cancer for last year and a half, North Node in Cancer and the South Node in Capricorn. So we were revisiting old, you know, government things, old structures, old patterns, old business practices. And instead of, you know, we were meant to move away from, you know, Capricorn can be very selfish, but it's also very practical. It's very, you know, there's a discipline that comes with it, but we were meant to move away from the individual business focus, and we were meant to, with Jupiter, with the North Node in Cancer, to, you know, go toward avenues that helped us to take care of our families and take care of our, you know, make sure everybody was secure, take care of our elderly. And, you know, the nodes were in those signs when this pandemic happened. But what we're meant to do is to be curious now with the North Node. The North Node, again, I talked about this before, is our destiny, where we're meant to go toward, where we're meant to move forward to. So it really, you can see with the inconjunct right here that we're still in this period of adjustment with the direction that we're going, and it's going to be a year and a half that we're moving through this sign. And I don't know if you saw on the article I wrote yesterday, if you go back to, I think it's 2003, 2004, and think about what you were doing then, because this same axis of direction was happening then. And I remember back then, I was just beginning to really work professionally in astrology, and the North Node was right on top of my sun. So it was, you know, for me, that was all about work. That was all about getting out and sharing knowledge, sharing information. So that's something that you might want to look at in your own individual charts and really examine. Where are you meant to be moving away from? Sagittarius is, we're going to be moving away from short, long travels, you know, air travel. We're going to be moving away from the way we do higher education. We're going to be moving, you know, people are going to be examining what they believe in. They're going to be examining their, you know, what their cultures are, what their, you know, belief is a big part of this. And you know, Sagittarius is a lot more like, you know, just blindly believing. Gemini says, show me the evidence, show me the facts, show me the knowledge, show me the information. And it's also, you know, Gemini has like a childlike energy to it, and it's also very curious sign. So being curious and, you know, developing your mind, developing your understanding, all of that is Gemini. So I hope that sheds a little bit more light. Like I said, that article yesterday, I spent a lot of time putting that together, hoping that would provide some understanding for people, for humanity as a whole, what we're looking at with that. So does anybody have any questions on that?
Hey, Andrea, it's more like a comment. This seems like a really good thing thing to have right now, because we all need to be, well, I shouldn't say, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I feel like this would be a really good characteristic to have right now for people, because we do need to look into things. We need to read about things. We need the elections coming up. We need to be picky. We need to find out what's going on. You know, we need to get the facts about how this has all happened and what's going to happen. So, I mean, not that it's going to drive people crazy, but it's just a really good, I feel like it's a really good compliment as to what's going on right now.
Yes, I agree 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
instead of just like following blindly, like, you know, if the nodes were reversed, like in Sagittarius.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, okay, everything's fine. We believe and everything's great. If we're looking for facts, I feel like we're in a much safer situation.
Yeah, yeah. Gemini is very inquisitive, very clever, and, always, very good with words and communication. But it's also a lighter energy than like Cancer and Capricorn. You know, it's mutable, it's adaptable, it accepts change a lot easier. So that is helpful for us right now. I agree about that. So, does anybody else have anything they want to share?
I would like to say thank you for your hard work.
Oh, thank you.
Even though I didn't
You're
understand a
welcome.
whole lot of it, but I could tell that you took a lot of thought and care in your message yesterday. I'm still trying to understand the North Node and the South Node. I kind of came in a little bit late, so you probably already explained it, but it's a lot.
Yeah, astrology is, I'm sorry.
Just said thank you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I hope that this is providing some further insight, because I am doing my best to bring forward whatever I can for people to understand. And, there's so many people that you see out there that are, they have no means of income, and they're not getting any answers. I mean, they're going to the news, and, Gemini is the news. Gemini is like, it rules over our minds. And so it's hard to see that. I certainly can feel that. If you're sensitive, you can feel the people, you can feel what's happening around you, and you can certainly feel that. And with Mars going into Pisces, eventually it's going to move. Mars is our actions, our activities. It's how we move. And in Pisces, it's going to be a lot more gentle, a lot more compassionate, but it also can be very confused about what actions to take, because it feels things so deeply. And by the time that Mars gets close to Neptune, that's going to be an interesting time too. Let me identify that, because Neptune is boundaryless. And so that's something we need to be aware of. This is May 24th, but we need to be aware about boundaries and setting boundaries. And that's one of the things that's going to, while Venus is retrograde and in square to Neptune, in relationships, it's going to be, we're learning how to set better boundaries in relationships, and not to make sacrifices that we really don't want to make. And so that's one of the things that's, there's a challenge there to grow. There's a challenge there to understand. There's a challenge there to, that's what the square is, for us to, be creative and look beneath the surface. But certainly Venus and Gemini it's pretty interesting, because it doesn't like to commit. Venus and Gemini, when it comes to love, when it comes to relationships, it doesn't like to commit to anything. So, but Venus, you know, it's the glue that binds us together. And being in Gemini, you know, it likes to be free. So, you know, I know one thing with Venus, when I see Venus squaring Neptune in charts, that person doesn't have a realistic viewpoint of relationships. They can't see things clearly. They can't see people clearly. And so, you know, it's a lifetime of growth in that area in relationships, but this is affecting the world. So it's going to be an interesting 3 months with that, you know, happening, Venus squaring Neptune 3 times. So, you know, astrology is a map of the energies around us. It's the planets that surround us here on Earth, and they really do have a big effect on us. And, you know, oh, I heard this, there was something on YouTube News about Susan Miller, about her forecast back in January, which was all positive for the whole year for everybody. And so, you know, astrologers have a lot of responsibility and how we interpret things. I mean, we can go with a lower vibration or we can look at the higher vibration. And can you imagine if she had said, you know, we're going to have a pandemic? People would have panicked. And, you know, all astrologers knew that we had this collection of planets coming together here. Pluto rules over death, change, transformation, transitions. It's very powerful. Being in Capricorn, it would be, you know, huge transformations of government because it's controlling factors, Capricorn. It's the powers of business, you know, changes in business, changes in structure, changes government, changes in big business, and it's all happening. Jupiter expanded this energy, and Saturn said, okay, there's going to be a lot of restriction, there's going to be rules, there's going to be, you know, those are some real strong controlling influences right there. So there's so many theories out there. I don't really, you know, I don't know what's true and what's not true, but I think that we'll find out over time. I don't think it'll be really, really quick, but I think it over time we will. So does anybody else have anything they want to add?
Hey, Andrea, I have one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is on a much lighter note, but I read somewhere that during a Venus retrograde, it's a good time to like go through your closet and like, you know, donate stuff that you don't want anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's square to Neptune, are we going to be throwing out things that we are not clear if we want to throw out or not?
Well, this again is a universal energy.
Okay.
So whatever it's doing in your own personal chart would be, you know, a little different, but this is universally that people are just confused about what their values are, confused. So, you know, Venus retrograde is, you know, it's not a time to like go change your appearance completely, because it's revisiting, you know, Venus is beauty. Venus is the things we value. But it's in Gemini, so I think it's going to be more intellectual. I think that is actually a really good thing to revisit what, you know, what you have a lot of. I think it's a really good thing to do during Venus retrograde.
Okay.
Does anybody else have anything else they want to add or say or offer? Okay, well, I guess we're gonna end for the night. Unless there's anything else anybody else wants to add.
Andrea, what you had said earlier about that woman, what was her name? Sarah or Sandra or the the one you talked
Oh,
about.
you mean the
The
astrologer?
astrologer? Yeah, the astrologer. So are you saying she said everybody was going to have a great year? Are you saying that she didn't speak? Like when I have a reading with you, I know I want to know the truth, bad or
Mhm.
good. Are you
Mhm.
saying that she gave a false, she put false out there, or she was afraid to tell the truth? I don't, of what she saw.
Well, Susan Miller is a really famous astrologer, and she you can look her up on the web, but she's an older lady, and she didn't put false. She just didn't talk about the negative stuff. And
Well, isn't that to go along with it, positive and negative? It's whatever's the truth.
right, well, that was her choice of what she did, and they're really there's a lot of people really criticizing her now, saying that, you know, and there was an article about, is this astrology going to survive? Is astrology going to be like kicked out because of that, you know? And
Oh, well, I don't know her, but I know that, you know, one of the reasons I like your readings, I feel like you don't decide just to tell me the only the positive. I feel like you're well-rounded with your readings on the positive and negative, and that's what I appreciate.
thank you. I do my best because, you know, you can talk about something, you can analyze it, you can break it down, but it's another thing to live it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, you can have some like really positive things going on in your chart in the midst of some really challenging things. And so it's good to know those positives because they help get you through.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, and sometimes, you know, I've had where I've done readings and people get mad at me for telling them the truth. And, you know, that's part of my job, but it's not easy to deliver difficult news. So,
Right, but I find that I'm at least a little prepared,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I guess you could say.
Yeah, that's one of the, you know, it's very important. That's what astrology can give you because it's so exact, you know, from a, you know, when we look at our own personal charts.
Right.
Yeah, we have some new people on here tonight too, which I'm really happy about. And, you know, astrology is not something that you know, learn overnight. It takes years and years and years. And I'm really grateful for everybody that's on here who's in class. We just started a class last Thursday night, and we're going to have, so it's basically the beginnings of learning the language of astrology. And, you know, it takes time to develop and really to step into the energy because there's a depth to it. And yeah, so does anybody else have anything to add?
I think it's too bad what happened to the astrologer Susan Miller, honestly. I mean, it's kind of like you're caught between a rock and a hard place, you know, to do a forecast for the year. If you say the negative, like all negatives, you'll get a lot of fear. But then if you say all positives, then you'll get criticism saying, well, why didn't you tell us the negative? So, like, what do you do? You know, that's kind of too bad that she's getting so much, you know, criticism because you know, we're only human, and you know, she's probably trying to, you know, make light of things, and I don't know, that's just too bad. But it's hard. I can understand how that'd be a hard position to have.
Yeah, I think so too, Lauren. I really think so too. I know that she does a lot to positively inspire people, and she's written a lot of books. She's been on TV. She's not had an easy life either. I saw some interviews with her. I mean, this lady has had, I think she was completely crippled as a child,
Oh,
growing up. Yeah, so but she's a super intelligent, smart lady, and it's just more of that, you know, age of Pisces of, you know, putting down something that people, you know, don't really understand.
I know. I hate that.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. But yeah, I feel bad for her because it's not. I mean, she's not God. You know, she's not perfect. She doesn't know everything. She's probably just trying. You know, she didn't want to scare people, and she was trying. You know, just put positivity out there for the new year. So it's too bad. I hope that people can kind of give her a break.
I know. Well,
Andrea
yeah.
did a really good job at one of my parties. I got to tell you a story because Andrea knows how to relay information in a proper way. I had a party and my girlfriend had just recently lost her husband and she was going to see a doctor, and at the time we didn't know, but she had cancer as well. And I'm sure Andrea saw it, but she never said anything to my girlfriend Jennifer. She did a reading and everything, and then she did a reading for me. And Andrea gave me information in my reading and said that my girlfriend is going to need me. And she gave me information on Joe Dispenza and Gaia, and sure enough, Andrea was right. My girlfriend Jennifer did need me. You know, I was there. I gave her the information that Andrea had given me to help, you know, like meditation, help heal the soul and that. Long story short, she completed in April her all of her chemotherapy and everything. She had 3 types of breast cancer. So
Oh,
the way they corrected it was different ways. And she just got done with her surgery and they got it all.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's
But
wonderful.
I think you were very, very helpful in giving us all that information. And I'm sure you saw what kind of things that my girlfriend was going through, but you didn't relay that bad news like a ton of bricks. You know, you did it in a loving way. And I like that. It was appreciative.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and it yeah. Sometimes you see things that, you know, like people losing their way, not knowing what direction to go, and you know, and that's something that lasts quite some time, and um, you know, that can be. So anyway, I do the best I can to make sure that I provide the positives too. So I'm glad you could be there for her.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Okay, well, actually there's another yacht here. We also have a new moon coming up, May 22nd. So I'll be talking about that more next week, because next week, that'll be next Friday, I guess. And so, you know, that new moon's in Gemini. So we've got a lot of Gemini energy. We got a lot of, this summer is going to be loaded with eclipses. And so there's going to be a lot of change that occurs this summer, endings, new beginnings. So we'll talk about that next time. This could be too, I'm looking at this new moon and all the stuff that's going on with it. Mercury in Gemini right next to Venus retrograde, and that's in square to Neptune. So I get, you know, it's like I think that what we think, what we know, what we've discovered is still, there's this unsteadiness. There's this, you know what I also think it is? I think that people don't want to believe. They don't want to believe. That's what this could be, is, you know, not wanting to believe the or talk deeply about things that are not clear. But there is, again, you can see that there are some nice aspects to this. Is these those are quintiles. Quintiles are actually very good because that means that there is some level of healing that's happening. There's some level of overcoming that's happening. So it's going to be a process. One good thing I see about this new moon on May 22nd as it approaches is it's going to trine Saturn. So that gives us a sense of steadiness, stability, structure, even though Saturn is retrograde. So there's a strong intellectual energy there. So
That's a lot of Gemini.
I know it, right? A lot. I mean, we've got the sun, the moon, Venus, Mercury, and the North Node all in Gemini.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of mutable energy in this chart.
Yep. Yeah, a lot. And the sun, and then we also see the sun and the moon squaring Mars. So, I'm hearing about, what did I hear today on the news about, and that there's protests starting and people going to Washington to protest. So we're probably going to see some of that with Mars and square to the sun and the moon.
I can see how our community is definitely in an uncertain. You have some people who are taking precautions and wearing masks because they're scared of getting a virus. But a lot of people are not wearing the mask or the gloves, and they're not protecting themselves because either A, they think that their rights are being infringed, or B, they don't really believe that there is a virus, or it can't hit them. How can you, it's like a doubting Thomas. How can you believe in something if you don't see it? That's the way I can, see. So I see a lot of people in misbelief during this time. And, in May, with everything opening up, is really going to show. But if you look in times past on other viruses like the swine flu and that, the influenza type of flu viruses, it normally ends in May, as it gets hotter. So I don't think that we're out of it, not for a long shot, until we get some type of vaccination or, some good hard fact cures besides just plasma transplants. But I can see all the confusion.
It's very confusing.
I don't know that if they came out with a vaccine right now that I would trust because they have no time to test it. So I don't know how I feel about that with this Venus Neptune thing going on.
Agree.
Hey, Andrea?
Yeah.
When does Venus come out of retrograde and move past the square with Neptune?
That is, I believe, in I believe it's July and August. It's going to square 3 times. In June, it's going to square again. And then I think in August, on its 3rd pass, when it comes out, because it's retrograde till June 25th, and then it's going to go from 5 degrees. Let's see, Venus. Oh, wait a minute, come back here. Okay, so Venus retrogrades. It actually started today here, and it goes in June. It's going to, that's a strong square. So it's moving past its exact squaring right there, May, in May going into June. And then it's going to, when it goes direct, you can see it's direct right here, Venus is at 5 degrees. So it's going to go back to 22. So between June 25th and around the end of July.
Okay.
is when it takes its last pass. You know, it'll go through the last square.
Do you think
'Cause-
things, sorry,
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, do you think things will get clearer for everyone once that happens?
I think that there's going to be things internally that get revealed because, see, even Neptune goes retrograde. You can see here in June 25th. Always in June is when Neptune goes retrograde. So I think retrogrades, what they do is they bring the ability to revisit so that we can find answers. So, you know, it's going to be, I think, steps involved with because of that Venus square Neptune. But like I talked about earlier, you know, all the things that have to do that we can do is, you know, it's a time where we're really getting a chance to revisit our creative expression, and you know, it's a time that we can write, a time that we can have conversations, and you know, we're not necessarily going to get all the answers. It might be very confusing, but I think that there'll be steps involved in getting that clarity. So that's actually a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember years ago, I had a client who was Jupiter retrograde, and she was trying to sell this beautiful big house. They were in financial difficulties, and I just didn't think that while Jupiter was retrograde, because of his position, that house would sell until Jupiter went direct. Right when Jupiter went direct, they sold the house. So, you know, Jupiter expands outwardly, but when you know, retrogrades make us go and look at what is wrong. What's wrong inside? You know, what do we miss? That's kind of like that energy. So yeah, it's going to be a path for sure. I know I'm not wearing a mask when I go out now, but I'm also very careful. I wash my hands when I, you know, get home, and we don't have a real bad. It's not really bad here, but you know, things are starting to open up, and you know, one thing I know is that fear can really decrease our immune system also.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we shouldn't be realistic, but fear can also really decrease our immune system.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely takes a toll.
Yep.
Yeah. So, does anybody else have anything else they want to add?
Yeah, I'm still seeing that Sun squaring Mars by the end of June. Just in a sign other than Gemini.
Well, Mars is about to move into Aries. That's why.
Cardinal.
Yeah. So that, you know, cardinal, mutable typically is a lot more, you know, just unsteady about staying on track. The
Mm-hmm.
challenge is to stay on track, but cardinal it's a challenge not to act
Yeah.
on anger, challenge not to, you know, and because Mars in Aries says, let's go.
Right.
It's time to go. It's time to go. But the Sun in Cancer says, wait a minute,
Mm-hmm.
hold on. We you know, there's some things here that we haven't taken care of yet, and so there could be some uprising there.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Mercury squaring.
Mercury's retrograde too.
Ugh, yuck.
Yeah, that actually starts on June 18th, but we're in the precursor of that, June 2nd.
What degrees in Cancer, like, does it go retrograde, and then what does it go back to?
It goes from 14 degrees of Cancer on June 18 back to 5 degrees of Cancer by July 11th. So those are the areas that we'll be retracing, looking for the means to, you know, retrogrades bring us the means to a brighter future.
Mhm.
So, but nobody likes, especially Mercury, because things get all mixed up and our logic is lessened,
Yeah.
but we're going to be thinking a lot about our security, that's for sure. Cancer,
Mhm.
security, caregiving, nurturance, our families.
The home. The home, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Huh. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you have any planets close to those degrees, those are areas where you'll be retracing,
Mhm.
revisiting, realizing all of the re's.
I know you probably just said it already, but when does it go retrograde again, and then when does it go direct?
June 18th through July 11th.
July 11th. Okay.
And then we come out, I've tested Mercury retrograde both ways, and sure enough, if you have to move forward on something because you have no choice in your life, you will be revisiting it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's and I wait till we get past the last shadow, which would be July 25th, because but by that time you're moving forward with that information, but you're mentally equipped with a lot more knowledge. So there's the conclusion typically of what started way back on June 2nd, the before shadow. So between June 2nd and June 18th, wherever this is occurring in our chart, we are thinking about it, whatever we were thinking about doing, whatever we were thinking about making a decision on, we're going to retrace it between June 18th and July 11th. So even if you have Mercury retrograde by birth, you're not so affected by it, but you are still, because Mercury by progression will wake up. And so, you are affected. So, pretty much the rule is really Mercury rules our minds, our thought processes, our logic, our reason, electronic, mechanical things. And so I know my car needed attention this last Mercury retrograde, and it ended up being a pretty pricey bill to fix it, but it needed to be revisited. So, and it was good I did. So those things that need to be fixed will come up during retrogrades. So you look at the nature of the planet that's in retrograde and where it's at in your chart, and that's a pretty long conversation. So does anybody else have any questions or anything else they want to add? Okay, well, everybody, thanks for coming on tonight. I really appreciate all of you and your input and your support, and I hope you all stay well.
Thank you, Andrea.
Yes, thank you.
We
Thank
appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Yep, we'll be here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
See you
Okay.
guys Thursday for those who are in class.
Yes,
Yeah.
Thursday.